We just use the upload function feature to upload your local files into these tables, these files, and generate tables. But more likely in a working environment is that there will be data stored in certain storage place, right? In certain storage account containers, Azure blobs the containers or AWS S3, where you will connect to these places and retrieve data, and to avoid duplicated data as well as the transformation cost. Most likely, you will let the data resides in those storage environment, but create shortcuts to access those files. So we will start by showing how to create shortcuts. In order to reference the data in the remote location, apparently you need to provide the link URL to that location and the access privilege, the credentials to access that location, right? These are the two things that we are going to need it in order to create such a shortcut. And so first of all, we are going to show how do you create shortcut. You can get existing lakehouse tables. Microsoft OneLake, this is easy. So for external source, you have Amazon S3 and the Azure Data Lake and Google Cloud Storage, the most typical three cloud storage, right? We already get data here in this container called the sample CSV file. And the noteworthy is this one is a delta table. It's in what we call a delta table format. This people country delta is called it's a delta table, and the others are simple CSV files. So let's start by creating a connection to this Azure Data Lake storage. As you can see, I already created some existing ones. Let's say if you want to create a new connection, what do you going to need? You will need a URL. You get the URL by going into this container, and in its property session, copy that over, and then you come back. I forgot to copy that over. One thing to change is you need to change this blob to DFS. This is a different protocol, right? Remember we talked about when we create this the storage account, we mentioned that you need to enable the hierarchical nameplace. Enable hierarchical nameplace actually give you the ability to connect to DFS protocol. If you did not check that the enable hierarchical namespace checkbox, then it's not going to have a DFS protocol open. Then you will not be able to connect to that storage, that the Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. So you have to enable that hierarchical namespace when you create that storage account. Now, assuming you already done that, of course, I already done that. So we have connections that I already created before, but we are going to show you how to create connectivity. You have a connection name, then you have the different ways you can use organizational account to sign in. You can use the share SAS or service principal or workspace identity or account key. This account key is the account key that you will get from the storage account setting. SAS is the one that we mentioned that you have a shared access signature. You can specify the time and certain restrictions, right? And service principal, we also mentioned that you are basically defining identity in place for yourself. But in this case, we already created existing ones. So I'm going to use existing connectivity. Next. And you see the connectivity. So if I choose, for example, the Titanic folder, I can just do a create. It succeeded. Now you see the data in Titanic. It's a Parquet file, so preview not available. But basically, the link is successful. And what if we just create another CSV file? Okay, so existing, again, DFS. Next, this time let me choose the retail folder where we have, I think I'm not going to do this. This two are huge files, so let me check the simple cells. Simple cells, next, create. So now you have simple cells and you can see the CSV file loaded, okay? You can also see the JSON file. The JSON file is displayed as normal data, normal text files. Okay. So this is file. You can also introduce shortcuts for tables. However, there's one catch that it has to be a delta table, what they call a delta lake format. The delta lake format is a special format that we're not going to cover, but it's a format that's utilized by one lake. So if you want to create a shortcut to a table, it has to be a delta format where you will do the same shortcut and then existing DFS connection. And I'm going to choose here, choose a folder. Remember, this is a delta folder, so the data inside should provide you with the data that's available inside. What if the folder is not a valid delta table? So in that case, once we finish the loading, because this is a delta format, so it takes a while to load. Meanwhile, what if I use a different table that is not delta? So if I still use simple cells, so this is, as you can see, this is the delta table's data. It takes a while, but then simple cells, interestingly, you will see that it will fail because it is not a delta table. Not exactly fail, but it will give you some error message so that and the data basically is not accessible. See, it's becoming unidentified and you get an error message because this simple cells is simply not accessible. It's not a delta lake and it cannot be a one lake table. Okay, so I'm going to delete this. I don't think I can delete this, but I can delete this one to remove this unidentified. Okay, and the last thing to discuss is when you create a new shortcut, you can also choose from one lake. By choosing one lake, you are actually choosing tables from other lake houses, right, or warehouses. You can see you have warehouse, you have lake house. By doing this, you can lay extra layer of representation. So we talked about when you create a lake house, gold layer lake house, if your silver layer lake house has already got a table and you do not need any processing, there's no need to create another pipeline and dump the data into your gold lake house. Instead, you can use a shortcut to map to that silver table. This will reduce your time and effort in creating the data transformation. The principle in Mendelian architecture is that you do not need to transfer if you don't have to. You don't need to make all the transformations and the data movements if you don't have to. That's why it's so important to have those shortcuts. You have a gold layered lakehouse. You identify a table, but and you also identify that table. You do not need to create new tables for new transformations on top of that table. Then you use a shortcut to avoid further development work of data transformation.